Merry Christmas! My name's Jack Taylor, and I'm here to welcome you to Imagine Christmas. We are in part 16, and today we're focusing on Nathan. Maybe not a name that you're familiar with in regard to Christmas, but let's talk about his story. And maybe it's time for some controversy as we imagine Christmas. And I'm going to be straight up in saying that I think Luke 3 is the genealogy through Mary's family. Matthew 1 speaks about Jesus' family line through Joseph and therefore shows Jesus' legal right to kingship and his divine affirmation. Luke is showing the human ancestry of Jesus. Now, both connect at David, but then they divide. And the kingship in Joseph's line goes through Solomon, as we said. The humanity in Mary's line goes through Nathan, extends all the way back to Adam, who is called the Son of God. Now, how far back do you know your ancestors? I'm sure there might be some controversy if all you have is Ancestry.ca to depend on. The Hebrews were very careful to track their lineage as far back as possible. We're so used to determining our identity by who we think we are individually, we rarely tie ourselves to those who have gone before us. Well, Nathan is the third son of David and Bathsheba, and he's one of 19 or 20 legitimate sons that are all together. He's what I would call a shadow child. Oftentimes in a family, the oldest child, in this case Solomon, receives all the privileges and the responsibilities, while the youngest child gets the indulgences. He's spoiled. The middle child and the children there drift in between, looking for some sense of who they are. Now, in the chaos of today's families, with technology, with individualized support, this may or may not show up. All we know is that Nathan didn't get the crown or the recognition of his older brothers, and he didn't rebel or make a name for himself in a negative way. He's the first son named by his mother Bathsheba, since the first three, Solomon, Shemua, and Shobab, were named by his father David. He may have been named after Nathan the prophet, since Bathsheba honored Nathan the prophet as her personal counselor. So there's good reason for Nathan the son to lie low. Family life sometimes gets messy. Look what happened to those others ahead of him. Amnon, the firstborn son of David's wife Ahinoam, he rapes his half-sister Tamar, and then is killed by his half-brother Absalom, who is the son of David's wife Maacah. Now Absalom rebels against David, and he is killed in a battle. Then Adonijah, the fourth son, who is the firstborn of yet another wife, Haggith, he tries to usurp the throne and is killed so that Solomon can take the throne. 7 wives means 7 firstborns. Now Nathan was wise to keep a low profile. He's 10th or 11th in line for the throne. But there's an amazing verse in the prophet Zechariah which focuses on judgment. And it says, I will pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and supplication. They will look on me, the one they have pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only child, and grieve bitterly for him as one grieves for a firstborn son. The land is going to mourn, each clan by itself, with their wives by themselves, the clan of the house of David and their wives, the clan of the house of Nathan and their wives, and all the rest of the clans and their wives. Now, imagining Christmas is not all about tinsel and presents and lights, at least not just that. This language of piercing and mourning for an only son starts showing up. There's a lot of grief tied up with this family line. Maybe that's one reason middle children like Nathan duck low. They see the grief around them. Still, Bathsheba names her son after a righteous man, and Nathan now becomes the one through whom the Christmas story continues in the shadows. Other names are being put up in lights. Nathan's line is just quietly preserving in the shadows through all the same troubles, through all the same challenges, through all the same heartaches as others. They're just surviving. They're waiting until the final pages of the Christmas story are written. I like Zechariah's word that a spirit of grace and supplication is being poured out. That's something we can demonstrate even in the shadows. On this Christmas, maybe you don't have your name up in lights for others to notice. Maybe you're one of the shadow people in our world, just quietly persevering, waiting. Amazingly, Nathan's name surfaces in the genealogy of Jesus again. And while the rest of humankind may have forgotten him, God didn't. And one day the names in the family line of the Messiah get written and recorded. And you may be forgotten in the shadows here. Christmas gives you a chance to reaffirm your identity as a part of the family whose names are written and remembered when judgment is done. So let's imagine Christmas again tomorrow.